Please turn to clause 12, page 309 of the report, and we've got people working hard to develop some amendments arising out of that. As I said in relation to the second deputation, that we actually have been thinking about how we engage ourselves in this process. I think the sense that we have, and it's a public sense, is people want to get on with it, but they want to not let go of the engagement process. So I think it's a combination of take your time as quickly as you can, but it's making sure that things happen, but also that the right things happen and that the community are engaged in that process. So we've come up with some amendments which pretty much pick up the idea that was presented as a potential amendment, which has endorsed the ideas identified in the Victoria Square restoration plan as the basis for developing design solutions. So that picks up that element there. And rather than that CCDU continue, we would request that CCDU continue to involve the Victoria Square Reference Group as the community's voice in the consideration of design concepts for any changes proposed to be made to the square, and then that the council, the reference group. I think 3 point. No. We've got that the council establish a working group of councillors Jana Johansson, Paul Lonsdale, Pauline Cotter and Tim Scandrett to meet and work with the Victoria Square Reference Group, which we recommend to continue to meet. But that the council established. I thought you had the names of the working group.
Do you really want to keep that one in as well? So yes, that was the one comes in, but do you want to keep?
But we've given these. We would give these authority.
So report back to this reference group.
Yeah. No. They meet with them. They work together. That the council established a working group of councillors Jana Johansson, Paul Lonsdale, Pauline Cotter and Tim Scandrett to meet and work with the Victoria Square Reference Group throughout the process. And I mean, you can play with the wording, but the idea is that we engage with the reference group directly through 4 councillors who essentially have the ability to resolve this. Right, because I mean, it is an idea. The idea that we're trying to achieve here is to get on with it. We don't want to slow things down and have reports coming back and blah 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 blah. What we want to do is get on with it, but we want to make sure that the right sort of influence and support is there, so that the community voice is heard throughout this process. And it's been a very good process. You know, that's the other thing is that there isn't a single person around this table that wants in any way for anyone to think that this wasn't so much better than it would have been if things had proceeded without any engagement with the community. So let's start with the question of cost, because that has come up with particular councillors having raised that as a particular issue. So are you able to just give us an overview of how much the proposal was going to cost and how much it would likely cost now?
So this is on?
Oh, well, I think it will be turned up when you're ready to speak.
Okay. So I have no updated information relating to the total cost of the Avon River Precinct project, because the Victoria Square component is part of the overall Avon River Precinct project. I'd just remind Council that under the cost share agreement, Council's contribution to that project is $6.3 or $6.4 million. I can't actually remember the point, but it's Council's contribution.
But that's to the whole precinct, isn't it?
To the whole precinct, yeah.
Yeah. Does that include the playground as well?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's right. It's right from the hospital all the way through to
Correct.
Manchester Street.
Correct.
Okay. Yep.
Beyond Manchester Street, actually, to Madras.
So, and the total cost that the Crown's committed to is 90-something million, because it's 100 million total, isn't it?
I think in the
89?
cost share agreement,
So it's about 95.
it is, in the cost share agreement, it's identified as 90s, the total project cost, and I confess this is a cost share agreement from, well, it would be
2012.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2013.
2013.
96 million it's identified
Yeah.
in there.
Okay.
Actually, I apologise, council contribution identified here is 6.8 million.
6.8 million. And I actually thought that was for the playground, and it was, but is that not the case?
In this version of the cost share agreement that I have,
No, that is the only version, so
there's no
we haven't
there's no
renegotiated.
allocation of that 6.8 to any component. It's
Okay.
simply identified as for the Sanka project.
Okay, that's good. All right, so Yanni?
Obviously the other thing for us is that we inherit the operational costs. So when do you think we'll be in a position to actually know what the capex is, and then all the associated depreciation costs and the OPEX costs?
The work that's been done on the operational costs so far, if the hard surfacing changes in the square, if the asphalt is renewed, the pavers are renewed, that sort of stuff, the operational costs over time will be less than what we will be paying now, because the asset is actually deteriorating to the point where it will need replacing things in the near future anyway. While there's no detailed design, as Grant pointed out, the overall concept hasn't changed, so your bulk amounts, your square meterage of grass, your square meterage of paving, that sort of thing, trees are staying, there's still lights to run, the operational costs won't alter in anything that I've seen.
So the original cost was 12 million, and we're still expecting around 12 million.
We haven't got any revised costs from CCDU on the
Okay, so
they haven't done the detailed design.
the point that was made is how can we endorse the I think it's 3.3 the plan when we haven't got the detailed plan? Like, is it given what we've heard, is it possible to change that resolution?
3.3 needs to be changed because of 3.1. So what we want is direct the Chief Executive to provide a formal response of council endorsement of the Victoria Square restoration plan once that has been 2015. Once that has been signed off by the working group.
So,
well, once that has been confirmed by the working group, because then that just leaves the working group with the decision. We're approving in principle, essentially. We want to get on with the job, but we want to have a mechanism for ensuring that there is that community voice.
So does 3.1 need in principle in there too, Ian, I think?
Endorse. Well, no, you could say, rather than the ideas identified, endorse in principle. So you could do that.
Yep.
Change the ideas identified to in principle.
I think what we heard through the deputation was that,
And then take out.
because the devil's in the detail, it's very hard to actually even endorse in principle, because actually there's a number of things that could significantly change the aesthetic, the amenity of the square that we simply don't know. So I appreciate that you've set up another process.
But we're delegating that to you.
Yeah. So the question is, if we're delegating it to another group, why would we? What's the benefit of endorsing it now rather than endorsing
It's
it later?
in principle. We're saying to the group, we're good with this, and we're leaving it to you to sort out the detail.
Okay. And just the final question, the comment on the vehicle access and the cycleways. Have we done any work around the cycleways and how they connect in this quadrant of the central city? Because I know that, for example, we've approved the cycleway coming into the Armour Street Bridge, and we've also got a cycleway going on Salisbury Street, but it's a bit hard to kind of understand if this is going to be a main cycle route, and is it going to connect,
Make it 3.2.
or is there other things we need to be aware of given the deputation around vehicle access through?
So the resolution of the cycleways rests within an accessible city, and I note that as identified in the deputations that the cycleway runs along the, let's call it the court side of the river, the true left bank of the river.
They basically get to the bridge and then they have to go across and then they get to the town hall, so they're not likely to really, I mean they're still likely if they're going from west to east to have to go through.
Tim?
I guess following on from what Yanni's saying, because it does seem a wee bit of siloing, because there should be, I was just looking at this plan, and I guess it will come through with us working with the Victoria Square reference group, which will be, I'm very much looking forward to. The marriage, if you like, between the court side of Victoria Square, rather than the true Victoria Square itself, and the town hall. What's been the liaison between the rebuild of the town hall and this area here? I mean, the marriage of the two areas. I mean, I've done in my previous life Shakespeare across the river and all this, and it just seems a perfect opportunity to look at the entire area of the outdoors of the town hall and Victoria Square blending together, and yet there's nothing here. And we also hear about the cycleways are part of the accessible city, but they get to this bridge from the court side of the river, but do they suddenly splinter off and go different directions? I'm just wondering, has there been discussion with the rebuild team of the town hall with regards to the future?
Dave Adamson would like to respond to that.
Between that team and the rebuild team, the bits that we're putting together at the entrance, the south entrance, the town hall has married in, and you'll see the definite lines of what we're doing will butt up and marry in very well on that. With regard, and I can't give you the detail of the accessible cities, but the accessible city main cycle route does come down past the court and in theory across the bridge, because it can't get through past the town hall because the town hall's built right on the riverbank. But I haven't, the detail of that hasn't been done, and that's part of what will be part of this team here, and you can see it's been incorporated slightly in suitable routes when you look at, I'm looking at page 11 of their report, which is page 325 of yours, but the detail is still to be married up exactly on it. But what we're doing outside the town hall and what's proposed for Victoria Square is very much aligned towards lighting.
I guess one of the things for me working forward with this Victoria Square reference group and our own working party together, I'd like to have those combined so the public can actually see the overall vision, because at the moment I would like to see it all in one and present it to the public rather than in what could be defined as siloing. But thank you.
Paul?
I'm not sure there's a question, but how easy is it to stop cyclists just driving straight through anyway, even though there's maybe bylaws against it?
Councillor, I remember when we attempted to ban skateboarders from the amphitheatre with signs, and that didn't work. It's not an easy thing to do, and really you've got to come up with design solutions. So we won't stop.
Okay, now are there any other parts of this resolution that need to be kind of removed? Does 3.5 need to go in the meantime? Approve the restoration improvement identified in the Victoria Square for the diagonal pedestrian way. Does that go in the meantime, or does that stay? I can't tell.
Could I just perhaps clarify, because actually I recognise now that I read that recommendation from this end of the table, it's the pedestrian way that runs from the Hamish Hay Bridge up to Victoria Street,
Ah,
which council
right. That's ours.
specifically asked
Yeah.
for that to be included in the consultation. And as I note in the report, I think it was 96% of respondents said it was a good idea to actually retain that as a pedestrian route.
But we've got that in 3.3, haven't we?
Sorry, that's to, and that, so the, sorry, 3.5 is when the works are undertaken, that the advice I received was that council would need to approve Sarah undertaking those physical
doing
works.
the actual work.
Doing the physical works.
So don't we need to link 3.3 and 3.5 then? It seems odd that they're separated from each other because they don't look like they're part of the same thing.
Yep.
So why don't we just pull up 3.5 and add it to 3.3? So
Should we be consistent with
and approve the retention in the interim of the and approve the Canterbury earthquake recovery undertaking the rest of for the diagonal once approved. So I mean once approved and once.
Yeah, I thought that Grant Hedges' suggestion and Dr. Rowe's suggestion around this be the basis for developing.
No. Hang on. Sorry. So
rather than approving it that way, that in fact we approve this as the basis for the sort of developing future. Or
yeah, but what we're
design.
saying is that we're actually approving in the interim the diagonal pedestrian pathway. So I mean it's our land, but it's basically and approve. Sorry, it shouldn't be once approved. And approve the Canterbury Earthquake Recovery Authority undertaking the restoration and improvement at the same time that they do. At the same time that they do the other works. I mean, and then it's linked to the doing the other works. Yep. I mean, we should actually authorise them to do the work at the same time because it will hold things up if they have to come back here after the fact.
No problem with that, as long as we include the working group.
So I just want to get the resolutions correct, and then once I've got them correct, we'll have the debate. Yep.
Can we have some consistency in pedestrian and the wording on that? Because you've used the phrase pedestrian pathway. It says diagonal pedestrian path. It says diagonal pedestrian way. I mean, I imagine we're talking about the same thing, but if we can just be consistent with the wording.
Approve the retention in the interim of the diagonal pedestrian path in the Victoria Square route, and approve the Canterbury earthquake undertaking the restoration and improvement.
I think we just say pathway for everything,
work.
don't we?
But look, you don't need to identify in the Victoria Square route again. So, undertaking the restoration and improvement of the path at the same time, of the pedestrian path, of the pedestrian path.
And this is the path to the north of the river, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and should we state that in there somewhere?
No, because it's referred to in the report clearly as the link to Victoria Street.
Of the diagonal pedestrian path.
In the report, they call it the Victoria Street connection.
Yep.
Okay.
It's pretty clear because it connects to Victoria Street.
Of the Victoria Street connection.
Good.
And then it's in line with the plan.
Yeah.
Just put it in brackets at the end.
Put it at the beginning, like so in the diagonal pedestrian path, in brackets, Victoria Street connection. How's that?
Yep.
Could I just clarify, because without talking with the Victoria Square reference group, because the amphitheatre was actually a very good functioning area for intimate events. And with regards to the site plan on page 329, it looks like there is no amphitheatre at all. So it's just in the interim, and it's just we're approving it so we can get forward and make things happen. But we can readdress this when we meet with the reference group. Because at the moment on the page, as I refer to 329, there is no amphitheatre, but it's just a nice grassed area with a walkway through it. And that's really concerning. But I haven't heard from the reference group. So.
Pauline? Can you answer the question? Is that
So it's our understanding, and I don't know that I have the map that shows completely the land status, but it's our understanding that that the pieces of land marked with 25 on the plan on page 15, and Judith's got something here. But we think that that's council land. It's not, and it may be held in fee simple, so that would be outside of the scope of works. It's simply that pedestrian way that council asked to be included, that diagonal to be included, to give a legible link to Victoria Square. So 25 would be outside the scope of works, which is where the amphitheatre was.
So that's still subject to further
So technically then
detailed design.
But then we're not including the diagonal, the connection way then, if it's outside the scope. But we've just approved it.
But it is outside the scope, and that's why we're putting it in there.
Can we put the amphitheatre? I just say, and this comes back to my earlier statement.
The amphitheatre is not in there. It's not included in the diagonal pedestrian path.
But it goes right through the middle.
No, that's what we've just heard, official advice from staff saying it's not included.
But we also heard from staff that there is a work that we're working with the town hall, that there's a link and there's some plans there and discussions there, but that would be outside this as well. I'm sorry,
I'll just show you the major cycleway goes right through there. So, I mean...
But this is not what we're approving in 3.3, or have I got that wrong?
So when council had earlier briefings with CCDU, there
we
was
did
discussion...
not include the Crown Plaza site. We specifically excluded it.
Correct.
And I thought we are including it now for them to do the work at the same time they're undertaking other work.
Only for that diagonal
That's
route,
right.
as an interim connection between Victoria Square and Victoria Street. So the report quite specifically refers to the fact that in the future, because this land is held, the former Crown Plaza site is council land held in fee simple title, that you will need to make a decision about the land and the airspace at some point in the future. But in the interim, because people are using this part of the square,
absolutely using
it, I think you indicated that it was appropriate to consider how that diagonal was improved to make it better amenity than the rubble surface or the gravel surface that it is now. So my understanding is that you asked CCDU to include that in their consultation process.
Yeah.
That consultation process has identified that the community would like that diagonal retained and to have, I guess, an improved surface there in the interim for that ease of access.
Can I check what we're doing though? Because, oh, sorry.
Look, I do want to get these the wording right, and then we can open it up to debate. So, Pauline?
Look, I just wanted to, I think Yanni's on the same page, to clarify. What is the view of the cyclists? Is it the view to keep the cyclists out of Victoria Square, south of the Avon, and bounded by Colombo, Armour and the Two Rivers? Is that the view? Yeah, but I'm asking what the panel's view is, because that's out for consultation.
Sorry, I'm not sure which panel you're referring to.
Well, you guys, your staff and Sarah.
So yeah, if what's on the diagram is part of an accessible city, then that clearly identifies that there are some cycling routes through Victoria Square. I think if you stand in Victoria Square today, you will see that cyclists are using Victoria Square right now.
I just wanted to know if there was any set agenda, but we've heard from it. That's all right. Thank you.
Just to be really clear, we've got a gravel pathway and all we need to do is seal it, and we're having a big debate about whether we ask Sarah to do it. Like, I don't understand what the difference is.
No, we're just approving them to do it at the same time that they do other work in Victoria Square. That's all.
But I mean,
rather than coming back to us, it's our land.
But we could just sell it anyway.
We
like
could
now.
do it ourselves, that's right.
So
Well, there is no funding to sell. There's no
Yeah,
funding
we
to
haven't
sell
we
it.
haven't
So
set aside funding, but we could wait till the annual plan next year and take a as part of the consultation. Eh? Yeah, that's my view. Yep.
So Sarah have agreed to fund it if we ask for it.
as I understand it, they have agreed to fund the retention and paving of this, yep, and they may reuse some of the materials from Victoria Square should you reach the point where the working group and the community reference group agree with the design.
Okay, so if we retain the amphitheatre, we're not going to put the pathway across that amphitheatre. Because at the moment, everything...
We're not approving the amphitheatre in this resolution, are we?
The temporary pathway runs across the middle of the amphitheatre at the moment.
It does now.
It will remain as a temporary pathway, you know, might be upgraded to make it smoother and level, but no work will be undertaken on the remainder of the amphitheatre. That decision will rest with council at a future
David,
stage.
can you help out too?
Basically, the next part of Accessible Cities all becomes us, and so that's a cycle route. You will, as identified by Yanni, that is the route that comes down and puts off to the left.
Down 17.
Which way you're coming down from Victoria Street. I suppose by that first resolution, I believe that you in principle are endorsing really what's on page 15 of this plan, page 229 there. And if you actually have a look at Scott, the shaped part that is the walkway, so that we've all that connection link, and it certainly is an important link at the moment. It actually does incorporate under number 25, re-establish the former amphitheatre, and we are integrating some of that work that's happening on the other side of 25 into the public area, and we're working with heritage people because we have got some constraints in there about what we've got to restore under heritage and what we are going to restore at the front of the town hall to make that the sort of, well, not the main entrance, but a significantly improved entrance. So we're working with heritage, which will then integrate into that side of 25. But at this point in time, that the middle of 25 will have a pedestrian and a cycle track through the middle of it. If you endorse that in principle, the detail will then come back from the working group about the final print. But they are saying that there's people have said they want the floral pathway, I believe, and that in principle is...
It's number 4.
Sorry?
That's number 4 on the plan.
Can I, just picking up the issue of the cycles, as I understand it, just from an email from Sarah, who chairs the group, cycles are currently planned to go through the square, not just around the other side. Is that correct?
So we're basing our comments on an accessible city, and I guess the cycles will come down and then go down the path that's marked 17. I think that's the route for an accessible city cycles.
So this is from Sarah Templeton. So she's saying cycles are currently planned to go through the square, not just on the other side. So we need to sort out the legal status of having cycles through it. Public opinion was divided on this. That's what she's saying. Yeah, so I think we just need to make sure that they do that. Whether we need to incorporate that, I don't know.
Look, I'm really worried about the fact that you know, we've had 3 deputations which were added such huge value to this issue. We've discussed this. I think we're actually at a point where we can resolve this, and I'm worried that we're now getting into the minutiae, the detail. I'm really happy to delegate the decision making to Pauline, Tim, Yanni and Paul, working in collaboration with the local community, linking into Sarah and CCDU. I do not want us to be sending the message that we want to hold this up. I'm really frustrated by, the degree of you know, sort of, I don't know, getting in amongst the weeds. At high level, let's just delegate. Yeah, I'd like to move that the resolution be put to. Well, all right, so do we have a mover for this resolution? Pauline and Paul. So, is there any discussion? Yanni.
Look, I think that it's actually been really great to have the community reference group and the public submissions. And I actually, and I know now's not the time to put resolutions, but actually if you think about the Avon River Precinct and Cathedral Square, whether this is a model that we could embrace for the other parts of it, because you actually get a really good outcome when you can talk to people about what the different needs are. I think for me that I'm happy to support this today, but I do think the point that was made is that we do need to see the detailed design, because there is so much uncertainty and unknown about what's actually being proposed. And if you just take the cycleway issue, which is a really major issue, where we want to encourage cyclists coming into the central city, and we want to encourage behaviour change, but we also want to have areas where people can relax and can have a more passive recreation rather than active recreation. And it does seem to me that we still need to kind of work through whether cyclists as vehicles should be going through Victoria Square or not. So just flag that as something that we should have a really good look at through that smaller group, because it does seem a little bit illogical that you would create points of conflict, and particularly if you wanted to retain the amphitheatre, which we do, then having a major cycleway go through the middle of it raises all sorts of concerns. So I am a little bit concerned about even doing spending money improving an area that could change, balanced against all the other priorities we have. And if you think of Sumner, where you've got that gravel pathway around where the containers are, I mean, that would be great to get that sealed if it's going to be there for a while as well. So we do need, and I know we've asked for some work around fixing other footpaths in broken communities. So I think that's why Victoria Square has attracted so much attention, because of the initial proposal, the huge costs when we've got other things that people see as being a priority, and something that people really liked and enjoyed. And I guess in conclusion, I'll just, this is quite a, for me, there's a strong connection here with the skateboarders, which is how I kind of ended up in local body politics, was when Victoria Square was redesigned, and it's an award-winning design. Actually, one of the lessons was they designed the best skate park that wasn't supposed to be a skate park, and all the skaters went there and used it because it was fantastically laid out to skate on. So I know very well firsthand of the conflicts that have arisen in this important space, and that's why I think it is really important to be clear about what use we want, and the design should match that. So yeah, that's my view on it.
So subject to advice, I've changed the mover and seconder to myself and Councillor Buck on the basis that it's, or the Deputy Mayor on the basis that it's, the two people that moved and seconded it were going to be on the delegated decision making. So, but anyway, Tim.
Can I just say, if there's anyone opposed to this, they could speak, otherwise let's put it. Sorry.
Oh, actually, I'm actually allowed to speak.
Yeah, I know.
Thanks. And I did, and I have listened to a lot of people over the time, so thank you. Well, Victoria Square is the jewel in the crown. I've done a lot of work in that area over many, many, many years, and I've done from Shakespeare to rock to all sorts of things, and I've seen people just sitting down in the grass and having picnics. So for me, I'm really looking forward to working with the Victoria Square reference group, and that to me is the key, because I have some issues, but you've done a huge amount of work, and I really look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much. I